So when you first described mutual aid, it could have been like on our street if somebody has, you hear one of the neighbors has, a health crisis, or somebody's mother died, then people get together and take them food. So that's a form of mutual aid, I guess, because it's spontaneous, right? But this is something else again when you talk about unhoused people. That's your particular focus. And when I heard that word unhoused, it got me thinking about the difference between calling folk who are living outside in tents unhoused and referring to them as homeless. And that in turn got me thinking about how we now refer to people way back in the day as slaves, formerly talked about as slaves, but now it's much more common to refer to such people as enslaved people. So unhoused and enslaved, it gives you a sense that these people are, they're people. They go beyond their plight, the difficulty they're in. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. One important thing that our group, in our wording around housing and homelessness in Kingston, we use people-first-centered language, so describing people who are unhoused rather than homeless people or even unhoused people, because just like you said, their being unhoused is not defining of who they are.
Yes.
And I think also with the distinction between unhoused and homeless, it brings us to maybe a little bit closer to the root causes of what makes a person unhoused. And it's not because of a personal quality of theirs, so they're not unhoused themselves. It's because our society has failed to provide them a house. So it removes a little bit of the responsibility that our broader culture might put on people who are unhoused.
So when you're part of the Unhoused Solidarity group, can you talk about the difference between solidarity and charity, even though they rhyme?
Well, that makes for a nice chant, solidarity, not charity. Yeah, I guess the focus of mutual aid in solidarity with people who are unhoused is different from charity because we don't presume to know what people need. Oftentimes, charity can create moral hierarchies where those who have resources to give make assumptions and are considered the experts in what the needs are of the populations that they're supporting. And so this can cause an expectation that people receiving aid or care or support should just accept whatever is given to them, even if it doesn't actually meet their needs. And so there can be sometimes a dissonance between what's being offered and what's actually needed. And then as well, often these models don't try to build more of an understanding of the root causes, an analysis of why the conditions are such that this sort of aid needs to be provided, I guess. Also, charity models can, because of the hierarchies that it might be presuming, it can be a way for the status quo to be maintained and for people to be managed. So we can think of in Kingston, like the shelters systems here, where there are all sorts of inaccessible barriers to actually accessing those resources.
What might some of those be?
So some that are common across the city are sobriety. You have to be sober to be able to have a shelter space. Many don't allow pets, even though pets are companion animals for people who are unhoused. Others is like limited ability to take in all of your belongings, so sometimes you're only allowed a backpack or a few things to bring in with you. And of course, if all of your belongings are with you, try putting that all into one backpack and bringing it in.
Or your shopping cart, for instance.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an image. So what you're talking about there, Clara, you might think of that as conditions or strings attached. Does that figure of speech of you're trying to offer people assistance with no strings attached? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would think so. And I guess why we support and are in solidarity with people who are unhoused that form encampments specifically is because we can recognize that in those spaces they practice forms of mutual aid themselves. And so not only is it that we don't, have any strings attached to the support that we might provide, but it's also just that we recognize that they're taking care of themselves, and if there are things that we can do to support them in that, then we'll see what we can do without over-promising, and if there's not, then we might just make some relationships with our neighbors.
So what do you do? So you have a regular job,
yes.
9-to-5 job, as it were.
Yep.
So this is entirely a voluntary gig. I'm assuming that Mutual Aid Katarokwi Kingston doesn't have any paid staff. Is that correct?
No.
No, not at all.
No paid staff.
So if you say you go to do what you might call a shift at Mutual Aid Katarokwi Kingston, what might that involve?
Right. So we do a bunch of things in our Unhoused Solidarity subgroup. One of those is simply doing check-ins with folks who are
What's a check-in?
Living outside. So we'll approach their tent or their setup, their structure, call out our names. Often the people who are there might recognize us from previous check-ins and just say, hi, this is Clara from MAKK, checking in, seeing how you're doing. We have often we bring some resources that are sort of standard and
like
always needed.
Batteries,
as it's now winter's upon us, the hot packets that you just shake and are warm, as well as snacks, drinks, long-lasting candles, that sort of thing. And then we just talk to them about how they're doing, what they might need, what they're noticing within the camp, whatever really they want to share. And sometimes people don't want to share and don't want to talk, and that's fine, so we respect space. But that's kind of the system of the check-in, and we usually try to do one per week where two of us go to the encampments or to other tents that we know are around the city and just check in with them.
How would you approach people, or how would you suggest that just an ordinary Kingston person who'd never encountered this kind of poverty right up front, not part of a mutual aid organization, what's the best thing to do?
Yeah, I think that raises an important point too, is that because of the ways that our culture has stigmatized people who have challenges, who panhandle, who live outdoors, there can be some fear and hesitation to reach out. So some of the things that we advise if you're looking to connect with neighbors, either if they're in a tent or if they're on the street, is to bring somebody with you. That can often it's easier to do things together. One of the principles of mutual aid. Again, bringing an offering of a snack or a simple resource, and just recognizing that kindness and compassion can go a long way. So You just introduce yourself, respect any space that or cues that you're receiving from the other person, and just asking how somebody is, how their experience is, if they need anything, can go a long way. And whether or not you follow up that introduction with, trying to build a relationship with that person, it can go a long way in terms of just showing that you might not have all of the answers, or you might have some hesitancy, some awkwardness.
Yeah, I would, I think.
Exactly. But you can still be kind, and you can hold those things together. You can be scared, you can be nervous, but you can also be kind and reaching out. One intervention that we're trying to make is that, yes, there is some individual responsibility from everybody to be engaged. What really will be transformative is collective action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Clara. Thanks for watching this episode of Division Street on YourTV. Thanks to producer Curtis Brunet, and of course to today's guest, Clara Langley of MAKK.